She watched the billionaire CEO's interview. Years later, their daughter spoke. Maya Torres didn't plan to watch the interview that night. But when his voice filled the room, calm and certain, she froze. The billionaire CEO sat under studio lights, speaking about success, vision, discipline. Then the interviewer asked about family, about children. He didn't hesitate. "No," he said smoothly. "I made a decision early. No kids." The words hung in the air. Her daughter looked up from the table. Not confused, not hurt, just alert. "Why did he say that?" she asked. Years later, that same daughter would walk into a minimalist conference room, place a folder on the table, and say something that would strip him of every defense he'd carefully built. "I don't want you to change that," she told him. "This is mercy, not forgiveness." What happened between that interview and that room was a story about power that shifted so slowly, no one saw it coming. Not even him. Chapter 1. The apartment smelled like garlic and rosemary. Dinner had been ready for 10 minutes, cooling on the stove while Maya wiped down the counter for the third time that evening. The television murmured in the background, the way it always did after work. News, commentary, interviews with people whose lives had been polished into narratives. She wasn't really watching, until she heard his voice. It stopped her mid-motion, the cloth still pressed against the granite. The sound was familiar in a way that made her chest tighten, not because she missed it, but because she recognized it the way you recognize a scar you've stopped noticing until someone points it out. The billionaire CEO sat in a leather chair, relaxed under studio lights that made his suit look expensive even through the screen. His posture was perfect, his smile measured. Every answer timed with the kind of precision that came from years of being asked the same questions. Maya told herself to change the channel. She didn't. The interviewer leaned forward, smiling in that practiced way interviewers do when they think they're about to humanize someone. "You've built an empire, Mr. Brennan," the woman said. "But what about family? Do you have children?" Julian Brennan didn't hesitate. "No," he said easily, as if the question required no thought at all. "I made a decision early in my career. No kids. It wasn't the path for me." The studio audience murmured approvingly. Someone clapped. The interviewer nodded as if this were wisdom instead of erasure. Maya, standing in the kitchen, felt her hand tighten around the cloth. From the dining table, a small voice spoke. "Why did he say that?" Maya turned slowly. Her daughter sat at the table, homework spread in front of her, pen still in hand. She wasn't looking at the screen. She was looking at her mother. Not with confusion, not with hurt, with something sharper. Awareness. Maya opened her mouth, then closed it. She had prepared for this moment. She had rehearsed it in 100 different ways over the years. She had imagined anger, tears, questions that came wrapped in pain. What she heard instead was calm. Clinical, almost. "Why did he say that?" Isla repeated. Maya set the cloth down carefully. She walked to the table and sat across from her daughter, folding her hands in front of her the way she did when she needed to think clearly. "Because," Maya said slowly, "some people tell the story they want to be true instead of the one that is." Isla tilted her head slightly, considering this. "Does he know I exist?" she asked. "Yes." "Does he know my name?" "Yes." "Then why did he say no?" Maya exhaled softly. "Because saying yes would mean explaining, and explaining would mean admitting. And admitting would mean losing control of the story he spent years building." Isla stared at her for a long moment. Then she went back to her homework. No tears, no outburst, just a small nod, as if the answer had confirmed something she'd already suspected. Maya watched her daughter's hand move across the page, forming letters with the same careful precision she used for everything. She wondered, not for the first time, if she had done the right thing by staying silent all these years. But silence had never been weakness. It had been strategy. On the television, the interview continued. Julian Brennan was laughing now, talking about his next venture, his next vision, his next carefully curated chapter. Isla didn't look up again, but Maya knew. Something had shifted. If you've ever watched someone erase a part of their life on television, you know that feeling. That tightness in your chest. That question that won't leave you alone. What would you do if the person who denied you was sitting right there, confident and untouchable? Stay with me, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about power. Chapter 2. The apartment was quiet after dinner. Isla had finished her homework without another word about the interview. She'd cleared her plate, washed her hands, and disappeared into her room the way she always did. Too quietly, Maya stood at the sink, rinsing dishes that were already clean, trying to decide if she should knock on Isla's door or let the moment settle on its own. She chose to wait. It was nearly an hour later when Isla emerged, holding her tablet. She walked into the living room and sat on the couch, tucking her legs beneath her in that familiar way. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Maya dried her hands and joined her. "Always." Isla glanced down at the tablet, then back up. "When did you tell him?" The question was specific, not vague, not emotional. "Tell him what?" Maya asked, though she already knew. "About me." Maya sat back, studying her daughter's face. There was no tremor in her voice, no wetness in her eyes, just focus. "I told him the day I found out," she said, "before I'd even decided what I was going to do." Isla nodded slowly, as if cataloging the information. "What did he say?" Maya hesitated, not because she didn't remember, but because she remembered too well. "He said he would support me," she answered, but quietly. "What does that mean?" "It means he would pay for things. Make sure you had what you needed. But he wouldn't be part of the story." Isla's expression didn't change. "Did you agree to that?" "Yes." "Why?" Maya chose her words carefully. "Because I understood something he didn't." "What?" "That a child doesn't need a public father to have a good life. But a child does need honesty." Isla processed this in silence. Then she asked, "Did he ever want to meet me?" Maya's throat tightened. "No." "Did you ever ask him to?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I didn't want you to grow up believing you had to convince someone to see you." Isla looked down at the tablet in her lap. She tapped the screen once, then held it up. It was a photo, a news article. Julian Brennan standing at a podium, speaking at some conference years ago. The headline read, "Visionary CEO explains why he chose career over family." "This article is from before I was born," Isla said. Maya nodded. "He's been saying this for a long time," Isla continued. "Yes. So it's not just about me." Maya felt something crack open inside her chest. "No, it's not just about you." Isla set the tablet down and looked at her mother with an expression that was far older than her years. "Then he's not lying," she said. "He's just telling a different version." Maya blinked. "What do you mean?" "He chose not to have a family," Isla said carefully. "He just didn't choose not to have me. Those are different things." Maya stared at her daughter, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. "Does that make sense?" Isla asked. "Yes," Maya whispered. "It makes perfect sense." Isla picked up the tablet again and stood. Okay. I just wanted to understand." She walked back to her room, leaving Maya sitting alone on the couch, staring at the space where her daughter had been. The question hadn't been innocent. It had been reconnaissance. Chapter 3. The memory came back in pieces, the way old wounds do when the weather changes. Maya had been 26. Julian had been 32. They weren't in love, but they weren't strangers either. It was the kind of relationship that existed in the spaces between ambition and loneliness. Convenient, comfortable, temporary, until it wasn't. She remembered the moment she took the test, the way her hands shook as she waited, the way the result appeared, sharp and undeniable. She didn't cry. She sat on the edge of the bathtub and did the math. Money, time, options. Then she called him. They met at a coffee shop he'd chosen. Neutral territory. Public enough to stay civil. Private enough to speak freely. Julian arrived exactly on time, the way he always did. Suit pressed. Expression controlled. Maya didn't ease into it. "I'm pregnant," she said. Julian set his coffee down carefully. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He nodded once, processing. "What do you want to do?" "I haven't decided yet." "Do you need help deciding?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. Fear, not of the child, of what it would mean for the story he was building. "I need to know," Maya said slowly, "if you plan to be part of this." Julian didn't answer right away. He looked out the window, at the people passing by, at the world that still felt manageable to him. "I'll support you," he said finally. "Financially, whatever you need. But I can't be public about it." "Why not?" "Because I've built something," Julian said, and his voice was steady in a way that made her stomach turn. "And part of what I've built is a narrative. About focus. About sacrifice. About choosing one thing over another. And a child doesn't fit that narrative." "No." Maya should have been angry. She should have stood up and walked away. But she didn't, because she understood. Not his fear, but the clarity it gave her. Okay, she said. Julian blinked. Okay, I'll do this on my own. You'll support financially, but you won't be named. You won't be involved. And I won't ask you to change that. Why? Julian asked, and for the first time, he sounded uncertain. Because, Maya said, I don't want my child growing up believing they need someone who doesn't want to be chosen. Julian leaned back, relief washing over his face. Thank you. Maya didn't say you're welcome. She finished her coffee in silence and left. The agreement was made. No last name. No acknowledgement. No disruption. Money would appear in an account every month. Tuition would be paid. Opportunities would be provided anonymously. But presents? That was not part of the contract. And Maya kept her word. She never told Isla lies. She never said Julian was dead or gone or didn't know. She simply told the truth in pieces, gently, as Isla grew old enough to understand. Some people contribute without showing up. Some people are afraid of being seen. Some people choose their story over their child. Isla never cried about it. She never asked why. She simply absorbed the information the way she absorbed everything else. Quietly, carefully, without resentment. And Maya realized, years later, that raising a child without bitterness was its own kind of power. Chapter 4. Isla was 7 when she first asked about fathers. Not her father. Fathers in general. They were at the park, watching other families. A man pushed his daughter on a swing. Another crouched down to tie his son's shoe. Do all kids have fathers? Isla asked. Biologically, yes, Maya answered. But not all fathers show up. Isla watched the man on the swing for a moment. Is mine one of the ones who doesn't show up? Yes. Does he know about me? Yes. Then why doesn't he come? Maya could have softened it. Could have invented excuses. Could have turned absence into tragedy instead of choice. She didn't. Because, she said carefully, he's afraid that knowing you would change the story he tells about himself. Isla frowned. What story? That he chose his work over everything else. That he doesn't have distractions. That he's disciplined. But I'm not a distraction. No, you're not. Then he's wrong. Maya smiled despite herself. Yes, he is. Isla nodded, as if filing the information away, then went back to watching the swings. She didn't ask again for years. But Maya noticed the way Islam moved through the world. Without expectation. Without the hunger for validation that came from being denied. She made friends easily, but didn't cling. She excelled in school, but didn't perform for approval. She observed people the way scientists observe experiments. With curiosity. With distance. With clarity. By the time she was 12, Isla had become someone who noticed patterns. She read constantly. Not just books, but articles. Speeches. Interviews. One night, Maya found her at the kitchen table, scrolling through something on her tablet. What are you reading? Maya asked. Isla glanced up. A transcript. Of what? A conference. From 8 years ago. Maya felt a chill. Why? Isla turned the tablet around. On the screen was a photo of Julian Brennan, younger but recognizable, standing at a podium. The headline read, Tech Visionary explains his philosophy on success. I wanted to see if he's always said the same thing, Isla explained. And he has. She scrolled down, highlighting a section. He's been saying no kids, no distractions since before I was born. Maya sat down slowly. Does that bother you? Isla considered this. No. It's just interesting. How so? Because it means it's not personal. It's structural. He built his identity around not having children. So when I happened, I didn't fit. Not because of who I am, but because of what I represent. Maya stared at her daughter, unsure whether to be impressed or heartbroken. That's very perceptive, she said quietly. Isla shrugged. It's just logic. But it wasn't just logic. It was armor. And Maya realized her daughter was building something. Not resentment. Not fantasy. Something sharper. Understanding. Think about that for a moment. A 12-year-old child, reading transcripts of her father's speeches, not to find connection, but to understand the architecture of his denial. Most children would have cried. Most would have raged. But Isla was doing something far more dangerous. She was learning. If you want to see where this kind of clarity leads, keep watching. Because what's coming will make you rethink everything you know about revenge and mercy. Chapter 5. Julian Brennan did not think of himself as a liar. He thought of himself as consistent. Consistency was currency in his world. Investors wanted predictability. Boards wanted clarity. The media wanted sound bites that could be repeated without contradiction. So he gave them what they wanted. No kids. No distractions. No compromises. He'd said it at conferences, in interviews, in keynote speeches. The line had become part of his brand, part of the mythology that surrounded him. He wasn't cruel about it. He didn't mock people who chose differently. He simply framed his choice as discipline, as focus, as the cost of ambition. And people believed him, because he believed it too. Most days, there were moments, of course, quiet moments when the machinery of his life slowed down long enough for him to wonder. What if he'd chosen differently? What if he'd said yes instead of no? But those moments passed quickly, because the story he'd told had become the truth he lived. And the truth he lived had become too valuable to revise. He thought about Maya sometimes. The woman, the conversation in the coffee shop, the relief he'd felt when she agreed to his terms. He thought about the child even less. Not because he didn't care, but because caring required acknowledgement. And acknowledgement required explanation. An explanation would unravel the narrative he'd spent decades building. So he didn't think about it. He moved forward. He built companies, sold them, built new ones. His face appeared on magazine covers. His name appeared in headlines. No kids, no distractions, no compromises. The line worked every time, until the day it didn't. Chapter 6. Isla was 14 when she started keeping a file. Not a physical one. A digital folder on her tablet, organized by date and source. Every interview, every speech, every public appearance where Julian Brennan mentioned his choice. Maya noticed, of course, but she didn't interfere. "Why are you collecting these?" she asked one evening. Isla didn't look up from the screen. "Because I want to understand how he thinks. And he repeats himself. A lot. Most people do. Not like this." Isla turned the tablet around. On the screen was a document with highlighted sections. Dozens of them, all saying the same thing in slightly different words. "He's not just consistent," Isla said. "He's rehearsed." Maya sat down. "What's the difference?" "Consistent means you believe what you're saying. Rehearsed means you've said it so many times you don't have to believe it anymore. It just becomes the line." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Pride. Fear. She wasn't sure which. "What are you going to do with this?" she asked carefully. Isla closed the tablet. "I don't know yet. You don't have to do anything." "I know. Then why collect it?" Isla looked at her mother with an expression that was unsettlingly calm. "Because," she said, "I want to understand what it feels like to be erased before you're even born. And I want to know if he understands it too." Maya opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say to that. By 16, Isla had become someone who understood power in a way most adults never did. She didn't seek attention. She didn't perform. She simply observed. She watched how people positioned themselves in conversations, how they chose their words, how they built credibility through repetition. And she learned. Maya watched this transformation with a mixture of awe and unease. Because Isla wasn't becoming bitter. She was becoming strategic. And strategy, Maya knew, was far more dangerous than anger. Have you ever seen someone collect evidence not for revenge, but for understanding? That's what Isla was doing. Building a case not to destroy him, but to see him clearly. And when you see someone clearly, really clearly, you gain something they can never take back. Control. If you're wondering what she's going to do with all that information, stay with me. Because the meeting that's about to happen will redefine everything you think power looks like. Chapter 7. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Isla was 17 by then. Applications to universities sat half-finished on her desk. The future was no longer abstract. It was close enough to touch. Maya saw the email first. It came through her account, routed through an assistant she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Meeting request, confidential." She opened it slowly, heart already pounding. "Ms. Torres, Mr. Brennan has requested a private meeting to discuss matters of mutual interest. Please let us know your availability for next month. The meeting will be brief and confidential. Location to be determined. Best regards, Executive Assistant to Julian Brennan." Maya read it 3 times. Then she called Isla into the room. Isla appeared in the doorway, still holding her phone, eyebrow raised. "What's wrong?" she asked. Maya turned the laptop around. Isla read the email in silence. Her expression didn't change. What do you think? Maya asked. Isla sat down slowly, eyes still on the screen. I think he's nervous. About what? About me existing. Publicly. Maya's chest tightened. You haven't done anything public. I know. Then why now? Isla leaned back, thinking. Because I'm almost 18. Because I'll be applying to schools. Because my name will start appearing in places he can't control. Maya hadn't thought of that. What do you want to do? She asked. Isla was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not with bitterness. With clarity. I want to meet him, she said. Maya felt ice slide down her spine. Are you sure? Yes. Why? Isla looked at her mother with an expression that was far too calm. Because I want him to know, she said softly, that I'm not the one who should be afraid. Maya stared at her daughter, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. What are you going to say to him? She asked. Isla closed the laptop gently. I don't know yet, she said, but I'll know when I see him. The meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Neutral location. Private room. 1 hour. Isla didn't prepare a speech. She prepared a folder. Chapter 8. The building was glass and steel. Modern. Impersonal. The kind of place designed to make people feel small. Maya and Isla arrived together, dressed simply but intentionally. No statement. No performance. Just presence. The receptionist led them down a hallway lined with awards and framed magazine covers. Julian Brennan's face appeared in every other frame. Smiling. Confident. Successful. Isla glanced at them but said nothing. The conference room was at the end of the hall. Minimalist. White walls. A long table. Chairs that looked expensive but uncomfortable. Julian was already inside, standing by the window, hands in his pockets. Posture relaxed in that deliberate way powerful people practiced. He turned when they entered. For a moment, no one spoke. Maya saw him take in Isla's face. The resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same jaw, same careful stillness. Thank you for coming, Julian said finally. His voice was smooth. Practiced. Isla nodded once. Thank you for the invitation. She walked to the table and sat down without waiting for him to gesture. Maya followed, sitting beside her. Julian remained standing for a moment longer, as if deciding whether to assert control or match her ease. Then he sat. Isla placed a thin folder on the table between them. Not aggressively, not hesitantly, with the same careful precision Julian used when he wanted to establish authority. He noticed. I thought we could talk, Julian said. We can, Isla replied. He leaned forward slightly. I wanted to meet you. To explain. Explain what? He hesitated. Why things have been the way they've been. Isla tilted her head. I already understand why. You do? Yes. Julian looked uncertain for the first time. Then what would you like from me? Isla opened the folder. Inside was a single page. A transcript. Highlighted in yellow. She slid it across the table. Julian picked it up, frowning. Then his face went still. It was his own words. From a conference years before Isla was born. I've built my life around a single principle. No compromises, no distractions, no children. That's the cost of greatness. Julian set the paper down carefully. Where did you get this? It's public, Isla said. You've said it dozens of times. I know, but I've heard this sentence before, she interrupted gently. You've been saying it longer than I've been alive. Silence settled over the room. Maya watched her daughter, barely breathing. I'm not here to ask why you said it, Isla continued. I understand why. Julian's throat tightened. Then why are you here? Isla looked at him with an expression that was neither angry nor sad. Just final. I'm here to tell you, she said quietly, that I won't ask you to correct it. Julian blinked. I'm sorry. You said you chose not to have children. I'm telling you, you don't have to change that. The words didn't make sense to him at first. If there's something I need to clarify publicly, Julian started. Isla shook her head. That would be for you, she said. Not for me. And in that moment, Julian understood. There would be no exposure, no viral reckoning, no forced acknowledgement, and no redemption. You don't owe me a public statement, Isla said. And I don't owe you silence forever. I'm just choosing the timing. She closed the folder. Julian stared at her, something cold sliding into his chest. What does that mean? He asked. Isla stood. It means, she said softly, that mercy isn't the same as forgiveness. She looked at him one last time. Not with anger. Not with longing. With something far heavier. Finality. I wanted you to know I exist, she said. Not so you could claim me, but so you would understand what it feels like to be remembered without being invited back. She turned to her mother. Maya stood, and they walked to the door together. Julian stayed seated, staring at the empty chair across from Isla, realizing too late that mercy was heavier than punishment, because it left him exactly where he was, with the truth, without leverage, and without the right to rewrite it. Let me ask you something. What would you do if you had all the power in the room and chose not to use it? That's what just happened here. Isla didn't expose him. She didn't demand anything. She simply let him know that she exists, that she knows, and that she's choosing mercy over destruction. But here's the thing about mercy. It's not soft. It's the heaviest weight you can place on someone, because it leaves them with nothing but themselves. If this story is hitting you the way I think it is, share it, because someone in your life needs to hear what real power looks like. Chapter 9. The car ride home was quiet. Maya drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Isla sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the city passing by in blurred streaks of light and shadow. Neither of them spoke for the first 10 minutes. Finally, Maya broke the silence. Are you okay? She asked. Isla didn't look away from the window. Yes. That was intense. It was necessary. Maya glanced at her daughter, studying her profile in the dim light. What are you feeling right now? Isla was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the same careful precision she applied to everything. Relief, she said finally. Not because I got what I wanted, but because I said what needed to be said. Do you think he understood? Yes. Do you think it will change anything? Isla turned to look at her mother then. It already has. Maya felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. How so? Because now he knows, Isla said. He knows that I exist. That I'm aware. That I've been watching. And he knows that I chose not to destroy him when I could have. That's a lot of power to give someone, Maya said carefully. Isla smiled faintly. I didn't give him power. I showed him I already had it. Maya pulled into their apartment complex and parked. She turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. Instead, she sat there, hands still on the wheel, processing what her daughter had just said. When did you become so wise? She asked quietly. Isla unbuckled her seatbelt. I had a good teacher. They got out of the car and walked toward their building in comfortable silence. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the courtyard garden. Inside the apartment, Maya made tea while Isla changed out of her dress clothes. When Isla emerged in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, Maya was sitting at the kitchen table with 2 steaming mugs. Isla sat down across from her mother and wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic. Can I ask you something? Maya said. Always. Do you regret not asking him for anything? An apology? An explanation? Anything? Isla took a sip of tea, thinking. No. Why not? Because asking would have given him something to refuse. Or something to give reluctantly. Either way, it would have made me dependent on his response. Maya shook her head slowly, amazed. You're 17. Age doesn't determine clarity, Isla said. Experience does. And I've had 17 years of experience with his absence. Maya reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. I'm sorry you had to learn that so young. Isla squeezed back gently. Don't be. You gave me something better than a father who showed up out of obligation. You gave me truth. And truth is a foundation you can build anything on. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, but didn't let them fall. What are you going to do now? What do you mean? Are you going to tell anyone? Write about it. Use it. Isla set her mug down carefully. Eventually. But not now. Not yet. When it serves a purpose beyond just exposing him. When it can help someone else understand that you don't have to be claimed to be valuable. That you don't have to be acknowledged to exist. That mercy can be stronger than revenge. Maya stared at her daughter, seeing not the child she'd raised, but the woman she was becoming. Strong. Clear. Unbreakable. He doesn't know how lucky he is, Maya said softly. Lucky? Isla raised an eyebrow. That you're the one holding his truth instead of someone else. Someone bitter. Someone vengeful. Someone who would use it as a weapon. Isla smiled faintly. Maybe he does know. Maybe that's why he looked so afraid when I left. They finished their tea in silence, and Isla went to bed shortly after. But Maya stayed at the kitchen table for another hour, thinking about the meeting, about her daughter's composure, about the years that had led to this moment. She thought about the coffee shop conversation 17 years ago, about Julian's fear, about her own decision to raise Isla alone. And she realized something she hadn't seen clearly before. She hadn't just raised a child. She'd raised someone who understood that power wasn't about control. It was about choice. And Isla had just made the most powerful choice of all. She had chosen to let Julian Brennan live with his truth instead of destroying him with it. Chapter 10. Julian Brennan didn't go home after the meeting. He went back to his office. The building was mostly empty at this hour. Just security guards and the occasional analyst working late. The executive floor was silent, his footsteps echoing down the hallway as he made his way to his corner office. He closed the door behind him and stood at the window, looking out at the city below. The lights stretched endlessly in every direction. Buildings he'd helped fund, companies he'd built, a landscape shaped, in part, by his decisions. But tonight, none of it felt like victory. He poured himself a drink. Scotch. Expensive. The kind that was supposed to taste like accomplishment. It tasted like ash. He kept replaying the meeting in his mind. The way Isla had walked into the room. The way she'd sat down without waiting for permission. The way she'd placed that folder on the table with the exact same deliberate precision he used in negotiations. She had learned his moves. Not from him, but by watching him from a distance. The transcript she'd shown him sat in his briefcase. He pulled it out now and read it again, even though he'd already memorized every word. I've built my life around a single principle. No compromises, no distractions, no children. That's the cost of greatness. He'd said it at a conference in Austin, 7 years before Isla was born. The line had gotten applause. It had been quoted in articles. It had become part of his brand. He believed it when he said it. He still believed it, didn't he? Julian set the paper down and picked up his phone. He scrolled through his contacts, past hundreds of names. Investors, board members, journalists, politicians, people who knew his name, people who didn't know him at all. He stopped at Maya's contact. It was still there, unchanged after all these years. Just her name and a number he'd never called. His thumb hovered over the screen. What would he even say? Thank you for not destroying me. I'm sorry for being afraid. I wish I'd been different. He locked the phone and set it down. Words wouldn't change anything now. The truth was already out there, held in the hands of a 17-year-old girl who had every reason to use it and had chosen not to. Not out of fear, not out of love, but out of something far more unsettling. Restraint. Julian finished his drink and poured another. He thought about the look in Isla's eyes when she'd said, I won't ask you to correct it. Not angry, not hurt, just certain. She had given him permission to continue his lie. But she'd also made it clear that she knew it was a lie, and that she would always know. That was the weight she'd placed on him. Not exposure, not punishment, just knowledge. The knowledge that someone out there existed because of him. Someone who carried his features, his mannerisms, his intelligence. Someone who had studied him the way scientists study distant stars, observing patterns across time and space. And now that someone had made herself known, not to claim him, but to remind him that he couldn't unclaim her either. Julian looked at the city lights again and realized something that made his chest tighten. He'd spent his entire life building a narrative of discipline and focus, of choosing one path and walking it without deviation. But the narrative had a hole in it now. Not a public hole, not yet, but a private one that would never close. Because Isla existed, and now he knew that she knew he existed too. The power dynamic had shifted so subtly, he hadn't even noticed until it was too late. He wasn't the one holding the secret anymore. She was, and she'd made it clear that she would choose when and how to use it, if ever. Julian sat down at his desk and opened his laptop. He pulled up his calendar. Meetings, speeches, interviews, a life scheduled down to the minute. All of it felt suddenly hollow. He closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, the city lights casting long shadows across his office. For the first time in decades, Julian Brennan didn't know what to do next. Because for the first time in decades, he wasn't in control. Chapter 11. Life returned to normal, or at least to the appearance of normal. Isla went back to school. She finished her college applications. She met with friends. She laughed at jokes and studied for exams, and did all the things 17-year-olds do. But Maya noticed the small changes. The way Isla carried herself with slightly more confidence. The way she spoke with slightly more authority. The way she moved through the world as if she'd claimed a space that had always been hers, but that she was only now fully occupying. "How are you feeling about everything?" Maya asked one evening while they were making dinner together. Isla was chopping vegetables, her knife moving with practiced efficiency. "I feel good." "No second thoughts about the meeting?" "None. No regrets about what you said?" Isla paused, considering. "No. I said exactly what I meant to say." Maya smiled. "You know, most people spend their whole lives trying to figure out how to do that." "Do what?" "Say exactly what they mean. Nothing more, nothing less." Isla resumed chopping. "It's easier when you're not trying to get anything from the other person." "What do you mean?" "I wasn't trying to get him to love me. Or acknowledge me. Or apologize. I was just stating facts. That removes all the emotional negotiation." Maya set down the wooden spoon she'd been using to stir sauce. "Emotional negotiation. That's an interesting way to put it." "That's what most conversations are, though," Isla said. "People trading emotional responses. Trying to get the other person to feel a certain way or respond in a certain way. But if you remove that element, if you just state truth without needing anything back, the dynamic changes completely. And that's what you did with him." "Yes." Maya watched her daughter scrape the chopped vegetables into a pan, marveling once again at the clarity with which Isla saw the world. "Do you think he'll ever reach out?" Maya asked. Isla turned on the burner and adjusted the heat. "Maybe. Eventually. But not anytime soon." "How do you know?" "Because right now he's still processing. He's still trying to understand what happened. He's still trying to regain the sense of control he thought he had. And when he finishes processing," Isla shrugged, "then he'll either accept the new reality or he'll try to reshape it. But either way, it won't change what I said." Maya added pasta to boiling water. "You sound very certain." "I am. Because I'm not invested in his response anymore. I did what I needed to do. The rest is up to him." They cooked in comfortable silence for a while, the kitchen filling with the warm scents of garlic and tomatoes and herbs. "Mom," Isla said after a few minutes. "Yes." "Thank you." Maya looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For never making me feel like his absence was my fault. For never making me feel like I was missing something essential. For raising me to understand that I was complete on my own." Maya felt her throat tighten. "You were always complete, sweetie. I just helped you see it." Isla smiled. "That's all any parent can do, right? Help their child see what's already there." They ate dinner at the table, talking about colleges and classes and friends. Normal things. Easy things. But underneath the normalcy, Maya could feel the shift. Her daughter had crossed a threshold. She had confronted the source of her absence and emerged stronger, not because she'd gotten what she wanted, but because she'd given herself permission to want nothing at all. That night, after Isla had gone to bed, Maya sat on the couch with a glass of wine and thought about Julian. She wondered if he was sleeping. She wondered if he was thinking about the meeting. She wondered if he understood yet what had really happened in that conference room. Isla hadn't taken anything from him, but she'd shown him exactly what he'd given up. And that, Maya realized, was a far more powerful message than any accusation or demand could ever be. Chapter 12. 3 months after the meeting, Julian's publicist called him with news. "We've got a situation," Andrea said, her voice tight with the kind of controlled panic that came from years of crisis management. Julian was in his car, heading to a board meeting. "What kind of situation?" "A journalist reached out. Says they're working on a profile piece about you. Wants to include perspectives from people who've known you over the years." "That's standard," Julian said. "What's the problem?" Andrea hesitated. "They specifically asked about family. About whether you have any children." Julian's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing yet. I said we'd need to review the questions in writing first." "But Julian, this is different. This journalist has been digging. They have sources. They're asking very specific questions." Julian pulled over to the side of the road. "How specific?" "Specific enough that I think someone talked to them." His chest tightened. "Who?" "I don't know. But whoever it is, they know details. Not everything, but enough to be credible." Julian closed his eyes, thinking. Had Isla changed her mind? Had Maya decided the silence had gone on long enough? "What do they know exactly?" he asked. Andrea rustled papers on the other end of the line. "They asked about a relationship you had 17 years ago." They asked about financial arrangements. They asked if you have a daughter. Did they use names? Not yet, but they implied they have them. Julian sat in silence, processing. After 3 months of waiting for this moment, it had finally arrived. Set up a call with the journalist, he said finally. I want to know what they have and what they're planning to publish. Are you sure? Sometimes it's better to. Set up the call, Andrea. Okay, I'll arrange it for tomorrow. Julian hung up and sat in his car, watching traffic stream past. So this was it. The moment Isla had warned him about. Not a threat, just a reminder that she controlled the timing. The call with the journalist happened the next day. Julian sat in his office with Andrea on speakerphone and the journalist, a woman named Rebecca Chun, on the line. Mr. Brennan, thank you for taking the time, Rebecca said. Her voice was professional, neutral. I'm working on a comprehensive profile about your career and your philosophy on success. As part of that, I'm exploring the personal choices you've made and how they've shaped your path. I'm happy to discuss my career, Julian said carefully. But my personal life has always been private. I understand. However, I've spoken with sources who indicate that your public statements about not having children may not be entirely accurate. There it was. Julian glanced at Andrea, who was taking notes furiously. What sources? He asked. I'm not at liberty to say, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond before publication. Julian took a breath. If you're implying that I've been dishonest, I'd like to know what specifically you're basing that on. I'm not implying dishonesty, Rebecca said. I'm exploring the gap between public narrative and private reality. That's all. And what exactly do you think that gap is? Rebecca paused. I think you have a daughter, Mr. Brennan. I think you've supported her financially, but not publicly. And I think that contradiction is worth examining. Julian's mind raced. How much did she actually know? Was she bluffing? Was this based on Isla's information or something else entirely? If I did have a child, Julian said slowly, wouldn't that be her story to tell, not yours? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. That's an interesting perspective. It's the only perspective that matters. If you're basing this story on speculation and unnamed sources, you're not doing journalism. You're doing gossip. I have more than speculation, Rebecca said. But I take your point about whose story it is. Would your daughter be willing to speak with me? Julian felt ice slide through his veins. I'm not confirming or denying anything, but I will say this. If there is a young person involved in any of your reporting, you have an ethical obligation to consider the impact on her life before you publish. I'm aware of my ethical obligations, Mr. Brennan. Are you? Because what I hear is a journalist who wants a sensational story about hypocrisy. What I'm asking is whether you've considered that the person you'd be exposing didn't choose to be part of this narrative. Rebecca was silent for a long moment. I'll think about what you've said, she said finally. I'll be in touch if I decide to move forward. She hung up. Andrea let out a long breath. That was good. You made her think twice. But Julian wasn't sure it was good, because he knew something Andrea didn't. If this story was going to break, it wouldn't be because of Rebecca Chun. It would be because Isla had decided it was time. And the question wasn't whether the story would come out. It was whether Julian would have any say in how it was told. Chapter 13. The call came 2 days later. Not from the journalist. From Isla. Julian was in a meeting when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He normally didn't answer, but something made him look at the screen. A text message. This is Isla. I'd like to speak with you. Today, if possible. His heart stuttered. He excused himself from the meeting and went to his office, closing the door behind him. He called the number. Isla answered on the second ring. Hello, Mr. Brennan. Her voice was calm, polite, the same tone she'd used in their meeting 3 months ago. Isla, he said, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I know, but something's come up that I think you should know about. The journalist. Yes. Rebecca Chin contacted me yesterday. Julian sat down heavily. What did she say? She said she's working on a story about you. She said she has sources indicating you have a daughter. She asked if I'd be willing to speak with her. What did you tell her? Nothing yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Julian felt something loosen in his chest. Why? Because I meant what I said. I'm choosing the timing. And I don't think a journalist ambushing you with this information serves anyone's interest. So you're not going to talk to her? Isla paused. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? I'm saying that if this story is going to be told, I want to control how it's told. And I want to make sure you understand what's coming. Julian rubbed his forehead. What do you want from me, Isla? Nothing. I'm not asking for your permission or your approval. I'm just giving you the courtesy of advance notice. So you are going to talk to her. I'm considering it. But I wanted to hear what you think first. Julian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. I think I don't have the right to ask you not to. You're correct. But I hope you'll consider the impact. Not just on me, but on yourself. Once this story is public, you can't take it back. I know. Do you? Because right now, you have privacy. You have control. Once you speak to that journalist, you become part of a narrative that other people will interpret and use and twist. You'll be the secret daughter of the billionaire CEO for the rest of your life. Isla was quiet for a moment. You're trying to protect me. Yes. Why? The question caught him off guard. Because you're my daughter. I've been your daughter for 17 years. You weren't trying to protect me then. Julian felt the words like a physical blow. That's not fair. It's accurate. He closed his eyes. You're right. It is accurate. But maybe I'm trying to do better now. Better would have been 17 years ago. What you're doing now is damage control. Julian couldn't argue with that. So what are you going to do? He asked quietly. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to talk to my mother. And then I'm going to make the decision that serves my interests, not yours. Okay. But I am going to give you one opportunity. What's that? If I decide to talk to Rebecca, I'll let you know 24 hours in advance. That will give you time to prepare whatever statement you want to make. Or to say nothing at all. The choice will be yours. Julian felt something crack in his chest. Why would you do that? Because mercy isn't just about what I don't do to you. It's about what I choose to give you even though I don't have to. The line went quiet for a moment. Thank you, Julian said finally. Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided anything. Still, thank you for calling. Isla paused. You were right about one thing. What's that? Once this story is public, it will change everything. For both of us. So I'm being careful. Not because I'm afraid, but because I'm strategic. You learned that from your mother. I learned that from watching you. The words hung in the air between them. I'll be in touch, Isla said. She hung up. Julian stood at the window for a long time, phone still in his hand, processing what had just happened. Isla had called him, not to threaten, not to demand, but to include him in the decision-making process for a story that was about both of them. She was giving him something he didn't deserve and hadn't earned. Information, time, choice. And in doing so, she was demonstrating a level of maturity and grace that made him ashamed of his own fear. Because she was right. What he was doing wasn't protection. It was damage control. And she could see the difference clearly. Chapter 14. Isla came home that evening and found her mother in the kitchen, meal prepping for the week. Can we talk? Isla asked. Maya set down her knife immediately. Of course. What's going on? They sat at the table, and Isla explained everything. The journalist's call. Her conversation with Julian. The decision she was trying to make. Maya listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When Isla finished, Maya reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. What do you want me to tell you? Maya asked gently. I don't know. What would you do? Maya smiled sadly. That's not the right question, sweetie. Why not? Because I'm not the one who has to live with the consequences. You are. Isla pulled her hand back and crossed her arms, thinking. I know that, but I value your opinion. Okay, then here's my opinion. There's no wrong choice here. Only choices with different outcomes. That's not helpful, Mom. Maya laughed softly. I know, but it's true. She paused, considering her words carefully. Let me ask you something. Why are you considering talking to this journalist? Isla thought about it. Because I'm tired of the secret. Because I want control over how the story is told. Because I think there are other people out there who grew up like me, and maybe hearing my story would help them understand they're not alone. Those are all good reasons. But you need to be honest with yourself about whether you're ready for what comes after. Because once you do this, you can't undo it. Your name will be attached to his forever. People will have opinions. They'll make assumptions. They'll reduce your entire identity to Julian Brennan's secret daughter. Isla felt her jaw tighten. I'm more than that. I know you are. But will everyone else see that? Or will they only see the story? Isla stood and walked to the window, looking out at the courtyard below. Children were playing. A couple was walking their dog. Normal life, continuing as if nothing had changed. What if I don't talk to the journalist? She asked. What if I just let the story die? Then you maintain your privacy. You maintain control. And you continue living your life on your own terms. But the question doesn't go away. It just gets postponed. Maybe. Or maybe Rebecca moves on to other stories, and this never becomes public at all. Isla turned back to face her mother. Do you think Julian's worried? I think Julian is terrified. Good. Maya raised an eyebrow. Is that what this is about? Making him afraid? Isla shook her head quickly. No, that's not. That's not why I'm considering it. Then why? Isla sat back down, her expression troubled. Because I think I deserve to exist publicly. Not as his secret. Not as his mistake. But as a person who happens to share half his DNA. Maya's eyes softened. Oh, sweetie. You already exist publicly. You've always existed. His acknowledgement doesn't change that. But it does change the narrative. Whose narrative? His? Or yours? Isla opened her mouth, then closed it. That's the question you need to answer, Maya said gently. Are you telling this story to change his narrative? Or to claim your own? What's the difference? Intent. Impact. Outcome. If you're telling this story to force him to acknowledge you, that's about him. If you're telling this story to claim your identity regardless of his response, that's about you. Isla sat with that for a long moment. I think I'm telling it for me, she said finally. Then there's your answer. But what if I regret it? Maya smiled. Then you'll deal with it. Because you're strong enough to handle the consequences of your choices. You've proven that already. Isla looked at her mother with gratitude and uncertainty mixed together. I wish this was easier. If it were easier, it wouldn't be important. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Isla stood. I'm going to sleep on it. I'll decide in the morning. Good plan. Isla started toward her room, then stopped and turned back. Mom. Yes. If I do this, if I talk to Rebecca and the story comes out, will you be okay? Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. Sweetie, I'll be fine. This isn't about me. Yes, it is. Your privacy gets invaded too. People will have opinions about your choices. About why you agreed to raise me alone. About why you never pushed for more. Maya stood and walked to her daughter, pulling her into a hug. I made my choices 17 years ago, she said quietly. And I'd make them again in a heartbeat. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Always. Isla hugged her mother tightly. Thank you. For what? For raising me to understand that I'm not defined by his absence. That I'm complete on my own. That his acknowledgement would be nice, but it's not necessary. Maya pulled back and looked at her daughter's face. You are so much more than I ever could have hoped for. I learned from the best. They smiled at each other, and Isla went to bed. But Maya stayed at the table for a long time, thinking about the choice her daughter was facing. And hoping, more than anything, that Isla would choose the path that would bring her peace. Whatever that path turned out to be. Chapter 15. Isla woke up the next morning with clarity. She hadn't slept much, spending most of the night thinking through scenarios and outcomes. But by the time dawn broke through her bedroom window, she knew what she was going to do. She found her mother making coffee in the kitchen. I've decided, Isla said. Maya turned, searching her daughter's face. And? I'm not going to talk to Rebecca. Not now, anyway. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Why not? Isla poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Because I realized something last night. Talking to her would be reactive. It would be responding to someone else's timeline, someone else's story angle. And that's not control. That's just participation. So what are you going to do instead? I'm going to live my life. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to build my own identity, my own achievements, my own story. And then, maybe years from now, if I decide the time is right, I'll tell my story in my own words. On my own platform. In my own way. Maya smiled, pride radiating from her face. That's very wise. I learned from the best, Isla said, echoing her words from the night before. Are you going to tell Julian? Yes. I told him I'd give him notice. I'm going to keep that promise. Isla called him an hour later. Julian answered immediately, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. Isla, I've made my decision, she said without preamble. She could hear him hold his breath. I'm not going to talk to Rebecca Chun. Not now. Maybe not ever. I'm going to let you keep your public narrative intact. Julian was silent for a long moment. Why? Because I don't want my first public statement about who I am to be in response to someone else's story. When I'm ready to claim my identity publicly, I'll do it on my own terms. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand something very clearly, Mr. Brennan. What's that? This isn't forgiveness. This isn't reconciliation. This is me choosing to own my narrative in my own time. Nothing more, nothing less. I understand, he said again. And one more thing. Yes. If you ever, in any interview or speech or public statement, repeat that line about choosing not to have children, I will respond. Publicly, without hesitation. Do you understand? Julian's throat tightened. Yes. I'm giving you the opportunity to quietly retire that talking point. To find a new way to discuss your priorities that doesn't erase my existence. If you can't do that, then our agreement is off. That's fair. I know it is. Isla paused, then added one final thought. You know what the difference is between you and my mother? What? She never needed to erase me to feel successful. She incorporated me into her life and built something beautiful anyway. You should think about that. She hung up before he could respond. Julian sat in his office, phone still pressed to his ear even though the line was dead. Isla had given him a gift he didn't deserve. Time. Privacy. Another chance. But she'd also given him a warning. This wasn't mercy born of weakness or fear. This was mercy born of strength. And if he misused it, there would be consequences. He set the phone down and opened his laptop. Scrolled through his upcoming speeches and interviews. Found every instance of the line he'd repeated for decades. No kids. No distractions. No compromises. One by one, he began deleting them, finding new words. New ways to talk about focus and discipline that didn't require him to erase his daughter's existence. It wasn't atonement. It was the bare minimum. But it was a start. Chapter 16. The acceptance letter arrived in April. Stanford University. Isla opened it with her mother standing beside her, both of them holding their breath. I got in, Isla whispered, staring at the words on the page. Maya pulled her into a fierce hug. Of course you did. You're brilliant. They celebrated that night with takeout and sparkling cider, toasting to new beginnings and hard-earned victories. Are you nervous? Maya asked. A little, but mostly excited. You're going to do amazing things there. Isla smiled. I'm going to try. She didn't tell her mother about the email she'd received 2 days earlier. It had come from Julian's assistant. Miss Torres, Mr. Brennan wanted me to pass along his congratulations on your acceptance to Stanford. He's made arrangements for your tuition and expenses to be fully covered, as previously agreed. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Best wishes, Andrea. Isla had deleted the email without responding. Not out of anger, but because she didn't need his congratulations. She'd gotten into Stanford on her own merit. Her grades, her essays, her interviews. His money had helped, certainly, but his presence hadn't been necessary. And that distinction mattered. In August, Maya and Isla packed up the apartment and drove to Palo Alto. The campus was beautiful, sprawling, full of possibility. They spent 2 days getting Isla settled. Buying textbooks, meeting roommates, learning the layout of the campus. On the last evening before Maya drove home, they had dinner at a small Italian restaurant off campus. I'm so proud of you, Maya said, raising her glass of wine. Isla raised her water glass. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They ate in comfortable silence, savoring the last few hours before their lives shifted again. Mom, Isla said after a while. Yes. Do you think he'll ever try to have a real relationship with me? Maya considered the question carefully. I don't know. Maybe. But the real question is, do you want him to? Isla thought about it. I don't know either. Part of me is curious. Part of me thinks it's too late. And part of me doesn't care anymore. All of those feelings can be true at the same time. How do you do that? Hold contradictions without needing to resolve them. Maya smiled. Practice. And acceptance. Some things don't have clear answers. Some relationships don't have neat endings. You just learn to live with the ambiguity. I hate ambiguity. I know, but you're learning to tolerate it. That's growth. They finished dinner and walked back to Isla's dorm. At the entrance, Maya hugged her daughter tightly. You're going to be amazing, she whispered. Not because of him. Not in spite of him. Just because of who you are. Isla hugged her back. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetie. So much. Maya drove home alone, tears streaming down her face, proud and heartbroken and hopeful all at once. She'd raised her daughter to be strong, to be clear, to understand that she was complete on her own. And now that daughter was stepping into the world, ready to claim her own story. Whatever that story turned out to be. You know what's powerful about this story? It's not about revenge. It's not about exposure. It's about a young woman who understood that the greatest power isn't in destroying someone who hurt you. It's in refusing to let their absence define you. Isla could have ruined Julian's reputation. She could have gone public. She could have made him pay. Instead, she chose mercy, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. If this story resonates with you, if you know someone who's struggled with absence or abandonment or the weight of someone else's choices, share this. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is show people that they're complete exactly as they are. That acknowledgement is nice, but it's not necessary. That we can be whole without being claimed. Chapter 17. Isla thrived at Stanford. She majored in psychology with a minor in business. She joined clubs. She made friends who knew nothing about Julian Brennan or the complicated history she carried. She was just Isla Torres. Smart, focused, kind. No one knew about the secret she held, and that felt like freedom. Maya visited twice a semester, bringing homemade meals and warm hugs and updates about life back home. They talked on the phone every Sunday. Not about Julian. About classes and internships and boys Isla was dating and friends Maya was making and all the normal things mothers and daughters talk about. The weight of the past didn't disappear, but it became background noise instead of the main melody. Julian kept his distance, as promised. He never reached out directly, but the money continued to arrive like clockwork. Tuition, housing, a modest living stipend. No strings attached. No expectations. Just obligation fulfilled quietly. Isla sometimes wondered if he thought about her, if he followed her academic achievements, if he knew she'd made Dean's List 3 semesters in a row, if he cared. But she didn't wonder for long, because wondering was a form of hoping, and hoping was dangerous. In her junior year, Isla took a class called Narrative and Identity. The professor was a woman in her 60s named Dr. Patricia Morales. She spoke with the kind of authority that came from lived experience, not just academic study. One day, Dr. Morales posed a question to the class. How much of your identity is defined by what happened to you versus what you chose to do with what happened to you? The class discussed for an hour. Some students argued that trauma shapes us fundamentally. Others argued that choice supersedes circumstance. Isla listened but didn't speak. After class, Dr. Morales stopped her at the door. You were very quiet today, she said. Isla shrugged. I was thinking. About whether it matters. Whether we define ourselves by what happened or what we chose. Maybe identity is just the story we tell about the gap between the two. Dr. Morales smiled. That's brilliant. You should write about that. Maybe I will. That night, Isla started writing. Not an essay for class. A personal narrative. About a girl who grew up knowing her father but never meeting him. About a mother who chose honesty over fantasy. About learning that absence could be a teacher as powerful as presence. She wrote for hours, words pouring out like water finally released from a dam. When she finished, she had 20 pages. Raw, honest, unpolished. She saved the document and closed her laptop. She wasn't ready to share it yet, but she needed to write it, to claim the story in her own words, to see it whole instead of in fragments. Chapter 18. The encounter happened in the spring of Isla's senior year. She was at a networking event for psychology students, speaking with recruiters from various graduate programs. The room was crowded, loud, full of ambitious students trying to make impressions. Isla was in the middle of a conversation when she heard a voice behind her. A familiar voice. She turned slowly. Julian Brennan stood 10 feet away, talking to a group of faculty members. He was there as a donor, apparently. The university was unveiling a new research center he'd funded. Isla froze. She hadn't seen him in person since their meeting in the conference room more than 3 years ago. He looked older, grayer, more tired around the eyes. As if he could feel her staring, he turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. Then Julian excused himself from his conversation and walked toward her. Isla's heart pounded, but she kept her expression neutral. Isla, he said when he reached her. Mr. Brennan. He flinched slightly at the formality. I didn't know you'd be here. I go here. Why wouldn't I be? Right? Of course. He glanced around awkwardly. How have you been? Fine. Your studies are going well? Yes. That's good. That's really good. The conversation felt stilted, forced. Two strangers making small talk despite sharing DNA. I should get back to my conversation, Isla said. Wait, Julian said quickly. Could we talk? Just for a minute. Isla hesitated, then nodded. Outside. They walked to a quiet courtyard adjacent to the event space. The evening air was cool. Jasmine bloomed nearby, sweetening the breeze. What did you want to talk about? Isla asked. Julian took a breath. I've been thinking about you. About our conversation. About everything. Okay. I want you to know that I respect the boundaries you've set. I've tried to honor your wishes. I know. Thank you. But I also want you to know that I think about you. More than you probably realize. Isla studied his face. He looked sincere. Vulnerable, even. What do you want me to say to that? She asked quietly. I don't know. I wanted you to know. Why? Because I'm getting older. Because I'm realizing that the things I prioritized might not have been as important as I thought they were. Because I'm wondering if it's too late to try. Isla felt something shift in her chest. Not softening exactly, but acknowledgement. Try what? She asked. To know you. To be. Something. I don't know what. But something more than a financial arrangement. Isla crossed her arms. And what would that look like? I don't know. Coffee sometimes. Emails. Whatever you'd be comfortable with. Why now? Julian looked away. Because I saw you tonight and realized that I have a daughter. A brilliant, accomplished daughter. And I don't know anything about her except what I read in university reports. Whose fault is that? Mine. Entirely mine. Isla appreciated the directness. You're right. It is your fault. I know. So why should I give you the opportunity now when you didn't want it 17 years ago? Julian had no answer for that. Isla softened slightly. I'm not saying no. I'm just asking what changed. I did, Julian said simply. Or at least, I'm trying to. Isla looked at him for a long moment, searching for dishonesty and finding only exhaustion. I'll think about it, she said finally. Julian's face lifted with something like hope. Really? Yes. But I'm not promising anything. And if we do this, it's on my terms. My timeline. My boundaries. Of course. Whatever you need. And you have to understand something. What? You don't get to be my father. That opportunity is gone. But maybe, if you're willing to be patient, you could be something else. I don't know what yet. But something. Julian nodded, throat tight. I'd like that. We'll see. Isla turned to go back inside, then stopped. One more thing, she said. Yes. If you disappoint me, there won't be another chance. Do you understand? Yes. Good. She walked back into the event, leaving Julian standing in the courtyard alone. He stood there for a long time, processing what had just happened. She hadn't said yes, but she hadn't said no either. And that was more than he deserved, more than he'd hoped for. For the first time in years, Julian Brennan felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not for redemption, not for absolution, but for the possibility of something new. Something earned instead of given. Something real.